Yeah, we're going to talk about passwords today. Everyone uses them. Nobody likes using them. I think the main takeaway I want to give to you all today is essentially some real advice you can do to do better at this kind of stuff, because in the industry, I see organizations all the time doing it wrong, and I see the consequences of that, and I see people doing it right, and much less consequences. My notes have completely failed me today, so I think we're just going to go off the slides. But once again, yep, I'm Antonio. Been with Quantum for 2 years now, do lots of pen tests on high-value targets, and I like making video games in my spare time. Quantum, yeah, we're Wellington-based, been near a lot of our clients in government and telecommunications and finance. But if you want to talk more about that, come talk to me later. But why are we talking about passwords today? So passwords, they protect everything in your organization. They stop people getting into your systems. And like most things in technology, the maths is pretty good, but the people using systems are sort of the weak point once again. Users are always choosing convenience over security because they're lazy. So as an attacker, I'm lazy as well. So if your Azure admin cloud login page password is password123, I'm just going to give that a go, and now I'm into your system. They're also kind of a failed concept used for machines, because machines, they like complexity, but humans are not really good at remembering many complex things. And this might have been all well and good back when computer security first started, and you might have had to remember like 3 passwords for your organization, but now we've got 100 systems in multiple environments, and you need to remember passwords that are unique for each of these. So we're going to go on a bit of a journey today, first looking at what are the password requirements of the day, why were they chosen, what's going on in passwords. Then we're going to look at what users are doing to game the system, and then we're going to talk about what smart attackers can actually do to abuse the things that users are doing. And then finally, at the very end, actually some tips that you can take away in the future to maybe enable your users to be better, or even protect yourself as a user yourself. So yeah, let's take a small look at today. So the most common password of 2018 was 123456. Does anyone use this password? Most people do, apparently. So we're getting most of our stats from this guy, Troy Hunt. I've done a link at the bottom here. And he's a really good source on a lot of password information. He compiles a lot of things and then runs stats. So also, as you can see, the second most common password of 2018 was 1234567889. So that's kind of bad. Where are we getting all this data from? Obviously, data breaches. I'm sure you've all heard in the news, more sites getting owned, and then all their passwords are leaked online, an organization gets hacked and all their passwords are put online. And right now, you can go download these if you want to go look at them. So there's about 500 million passwords in, I think, a single batch you can go download. It's a few gigabytes. And the great thing about these is these are real passwords of real users, and they get us real data. So we're not really making it up. We're not pulling data out of the air. It's actually, these are the passwords people are using, and they are bad. So how did we actually get here with all these bad passwords? So the password policies themselves, I think, is the main culprit. So a bit of history on this one. So if anyone's heard of NIST, the National Institute of Signals and Technology, I can't remember the exact thing, in the United States, there was this one engineer named Bill Burr in 2003 who pretty much just one day decided what they should be, and they were a combination of alphanumeric and symbols, and there was a minimum length, and you got to change it every 90 days, and this all made sense on paper because it's more complicated than having no requirements. And this was adopted pretty much everywhere for no good reason, and no one really questioned it. So actually the New Zealand ISM, which is sort of New Zealand's guidebook to security in general, has these same requirements. So it's all very well and good. So what's the problem with these requirements? The problem is that people are gaming these systems to be convenient. So strength checkers are making people make bad decisions. So can anyone tell me what's wrong with this comparison up here? So the big long password, more complicated, surely it's better. But no, it doesn't have a upper or lower case. No, it doesn't have a symbol. And password 123 bang is clearly superior. So why were those requirements chosen? So they were great on paper. So more complexity, it makes sense. There's more character options. So surely it's harder for attackers to really figure out what's going on. But let's talk about the maths behind calculating passes for a sec. So entropy is a word I'm going to use a few times. And when talking about passwords, we're not talking about a physics sense. This is an information context. And we're going to be using this as a measure of randomness, or essentially how many choices were made to make this password. So for instance, a coin toss might have an entropy of 2 because there was 2 random outcomes, and then 3 coin tosses is 8, and it goes up from there. The numbers we're going to put to these passwords is relevant because we're going to start talking about cracking and brute forcing, and if we can measure how strong a password is, we can measure how long it takes an attacker to break it. So don't get too scared by the maths, we'll get into it. So obviously a higher entropy would be more complicated and it's more difficult to crack. But one key point about entropy is you can't take a password and calculate entropy. The entropy is calculated from the selection process. So those strength checkers earlier of taking a password and trying to say if it's good or not, those don't really give a good idea of how strong a password is. You need to know more about the method of creation, how many choices were made. One side note about these breaches that are happening is most of them are actually hashes. They're not clear text passwords. So a lot of these need to be cracked. So this is why calculating entropy of a password is important, because we can calculate how long it takes to crack. But if no one knows what a hash is, let's do a quick background on that. So it's a digital signature. The main properties is that it's irreversible and that it's unique. So here's two examples of two passwords that are pretty similar, but they've turned into very different outputs. And when logging into a system, usually you'd compare a hash to see if you actually got the right password rather than actually comparing the clear text password themselves. And hashes are the best way to store passwords. So let's do a handy flowchart to see if you're actually storing them correctly. You can answer it in one simple question. So if you have a system, and can anyone in your system see the password in clear text, like the admin of the application, the root user on the database, the root user on the box, can they see it? If the answer is no, then good job. If the answer is yes, you're doing things very, very, very wrong with your password storage. So that's all well and good. Let's go back to entropy. Here's a handy formula. I'm going to be using it a few times over the day, but I'll try and keep it really simple. But the key takeaway is it's a measure of randomness, and high number is more complicated because it has more randomness in it. So let's look at an example. Let's say a password had 12 characters long and it used every single case, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, which is 62 options. And that gives us 72 bits. Whoa, what does 71 bits mean? You can't really tell how strong it is because we've got no comparisons. So let's get into that. But in summary, this is why those requirements were chosen by Bill Burr, was because there were more complexity options. So here's an example of using 62 characters versus 52 characters. 62 has a higher entropy. But what does those comparisons really mean? So if anyone knows much about bits, if you increase by 1 bit, it usually doubles in the number of options. So in this case, those are a 3-bit difference, which is actually 8 times more complicated. So we're going to be looking at a few bit numbers today, and if they seem kind of similar, remember that it's an exponential scale between them. So 71 is twice as complicated as 70 and vice versa. So that's why it was chosen, and so why are people actually making these bad passwords? So let's look at those requirements again. If you've got to use some combination of alphanumeric, you have to use a character, you have to use a symbol, you have to use some minimum length, and you have to change it regularly. Maybe you'll just pick an easy word, add a symbol on the end, make the first one uppercase, and then 90 days later you just increment the number on the end, or add a year and then increment the year. So we're pretty much seeing these trends time and time again. So that 500 million passwords we saw earlier, same trends. We've done some Active Directory analysis at Quantum, and so we take a copy of an Active Directory and then we crack the passwords in it, and we see these the same in our organization. Service desks are definitely a key part in this problem. They definitely have a word and then a year is the most common we've seen. So winter 2019 is probably the newest trend, if anyone's seen this password pop up in your organization. So yeah, the next point is password reuse is definitely a very big factor in this problem. So people don't like remembering lots of passwords, so they'll just keep reusing the same passwords, or they'll use a similar one, increment a number on the end for a different service. So for instance, if you're the admin of your organization and you're using the same password as you used for LinkedIn back in 2012, then you've got some big problems, because that's clear text on the internet right now for anyone to go see. Also reuse between accounts owned by the same person. If you've got an admin account, you've got a regular standard account, you're risking your admin account every single time you use your standard user. So let's look at an example. So the key point I want to do here is people are making decisions that are reducing the randomness or the entropy of their passwords. So let's go back to another example of 11 characters minimum length, any number of characters allowed, any type of character allowed, which is essentially your whole keyboard of 94. That's 65 bits. There's some examples of what passwords look like that meet those requirements. But now let's talk about how long it takes us to attack this kind of stuff. So in the bottom left, I've made a handy table of how many essentially password guesses your computer is capable of doing in a second and how long it would take you to brute force a password of that strength. So I've highlighted the 100 billion hashes guessed per second as our baseline, and there's a reason for that. So I guess the question for you all here is how many of you have a gaming rig that you like to use and you're pretty proud of it and yeah, got the latest like 2080 Ti's for your cards? So we bought 4 of them for our cracking rig, and we chucked them into one big box. And that one gets about the 100 billion hashes per second. So I guess you can imagine what a more sophisticated attacker would be capable of. So from this chart, you can see 65 bits, that gets us 11 years. That sounds pretty good. Like, how could an attacker get your password in 11 years? I guess you don't care at that point. Maybe the NSA could get it in that 4 days, but the problem is all these trends that are happening, we can really reduce that entropy from 65 bits to something a bit more manageable by making some smart guesses on the trends. Cool, so that's the users. Users are doing bad things. How can we actually attack these smart users? So we're sort of led here by a series of events of password policy wants to be complicated. People don't like doing complicated things. So they behave predictably. And then we can attack those patterns. So for example, let's make some assumptions. Maybe everyone uses a capsule at the front. Maybe everyone uses an exclamation mark at the end. Those are two simple choices that are quite common. And just from making those assumptions, we can reduce entropy from, I think, 65 to 63. And if you have a look, that's about 4 times faster to crack. So that's probably the simplest possible assumption. And we've already got a 4 times speed increase on the attack. So this is another famous XKCD page, but I want to focus on this one, which I feel is less focused on compared to the correct horse battery staple example. This slide is very good for pointing out essentially a set of decisions we can make. So each box on that slide essentially represents 1 bit of entropy, essentially 2 decisions to make a password. Along the top, he stated we started with any word from a list of 65,000, which is, I think, 16 bits. And then we've done a few decisions. So is it caps at the front? That's 1 more bit. Do we replace zeros with O's? That's another bit. Do we replace 4s with A's? That's another bit. Maybe at the end, we've always got a character. They could be a different order. And when you add up all these assumptions together to make quite a common, normal-looking password that meets those requirements, the cracking time goes down to 20, or the entropy goes down to 28 bits, and we're down to pretty much 0 seconds to crack that. So this is a very common style of password, and from a few smart guesses, we can pretty much crack that thing instantly. So the one thing so far, that was about cracking and brute forcing. We can definitely get smarter than that. So if you've ever heard of a dictionary attack, this is when we get a big list of common passwords, and we just try all of them. But where can we get this big list of passwords? Well, they're all internet, and there's 500 million. So if your password you're using is in the maybe top billion common passwords, then if we can do 100 billion a second, then we're going to get to your one in less than a second. So password attacks can also be catered to an organization. So we don't just have to take the top billion common ones. We can actually start profiling an organization and get a better idea of what kind of words people like to use. So a common trend we always see is people in an organization or website, they always use a name or a word of the organization in the password itself. So here's another example from Troy Hunt from the website CacheCrate. This was the 6 most common passwords used on that website. So as you can see, pretty much all of them contain the word cache, crate, or reverse. And with these, we can just make a list that is essentially every permutation of words in your organization and also crack that immediately. I'm sure many people in the audience have a password on a site that has the name of the site in the password. Cool. So we've gone through a list of what people are doing, why it's bad, and how smarter people are actually attacking these trends. So now what can we actually do about it to enable users? So the key takeaway, I think, is that length is always best. Adding length adds entropy to your password choices much faster than adding more types of characters. So we've got an example here of, say you use every character on your keyboard, 10 characters long. It's actually quite a bit weaker than just using only upper and lowercase and only 2 characters longer. So we can see a comparison of 11 years to 94 years to crack. So if we're saying passwords being longer is better, how do we actually remember these? One other note is that the NZISM has two options for password requirements. One was 10 characters with all types of symbols, which is the left one, or something with 16 characters long minimum and no other complexity requirements. And that's the one I'd usually lean on. So if you're trying to make a password policy for organization, I'd lean for throw out the complexity requirements, throw out the symbols, just try and make it as long as you can go. So yeah, if you've got a 16-character long password, how the hell are you going to remember that thing? There are two really good options for, I guess, managing this. One is passphrases and one is password managers. With passphrases, did anyone remember the title of this talk? Okay. Yeah, so I generated that password just by looking online at a big list of words and just picking a random 4 out of them. And I remembered it immediately as well. So passphrases are really, really powerful because they're usually quite long and they're much easier to remember than any sort of random garbage characters. I mentioned the XKCD example earlier, if anyone remembers what that password was. No one? Correct horse battery staple, yeah. So how did this get into your head immediately? One downside, I guess, of these passphrases is we know correct horse battery staple, we know NoHolidayChurchGenius. So these are now going to be in these dictionary attacks in the future, so don't ever use them. Essentially, if your password is known anywhere for any other system, then it's pretty much unusable. So let's look at the actual entropy of my title talk today. I generated this from a list of 31,000 words, and I randomly uppercase and lowercase it, and it happened to be capitals for all 4. So that's essentially a length of 4 of 62,000 options. That made 64 bits, which is essentially identical to a 10-character completely random password. So I think from those two in the middle, I think you can kind of get a feeling on which one is easier to remember. And of course, don't use NoHolidayChurchGenius. Password Manager, that's another great option for, I guess, defeating this problem. So Password Manager is a secure place where you can store all of your passwords. So this sounds like a risky thing, having all your passwords in one place, but I think if you can protect your Password Manager with one really good password or passphrase, then I think it's fine to have them all in one place. The main parts about a password manager that are good is it can generate the passwords for you, and it can be as long as you want. You don't have to remember them, and it can remember as many as you need it to. So for example, if you made it 30 characters long, that makes 196 bits of entropy, and the cracking times go off till the heat death of the universe, and no one will ever get those. They'll never be brute forced, and they'll never be guessed. Yeah, of course, the next part about password managers is reuse is definitely reduced because you can just create a new password each time. If you have 100 environments that you need to manage, you can just keep making passwords for each of the environments, and you never know what they are. And if you never know what they are, then no one can ever coerce you into telling you what it is. The classic rubber hose cryptanalysis attack. One other form to protect yourself is multi-factor. Does anyone use multi-factor to log into their organization? Yeah, so it's getting quite common now, which is good. So soft tokens, hard tokens, they're pretty good. SMS is a pretty good form of two-factor as well. There are some plausible attacks against them, but they involve essentially attacking ISPs or that kind of level of infrastructure. So I guess it comes down to defense in depth for this part, because if your password is leaked and you use multi-factor, the attacker can't get into your organization because they don't know your multi-factor token, but you shouldn't really just rely on one control to keep you going. You should always use defense in depth and don't rely on a 2FA to protect you during a breach. If your account is breached, just change the password and keep going. The MFA is just good to protect you in case the worst case thing happens. For administrative actions in your organization, MFA is highly recommended to be done every single time. So changing an admin's password, logging into your admin console for your cloud console, logging into a jump host, add MFA. Add it pretty much for everything that you really don't want someone being able to do if they just guess your password. Password expiry, that was that hidden third bullet point that we didn't talk about too much. I'd say don't bother about the password expiry. There's a lot of trains of thought for and against it. If you know your password has been breached, definitely change it as fast as you can. And I guess with the mantra of assume breach, then I guess you should always change it. But I think we can use defense in depth again to, as a cycle to follow. So for instance, if you know the password strength would be cracked in 1 year, then change it every 11 months, and you'll probably be fine. The main point is, of course, like with the password manager and passphrases, a good password should remain a good password. You don't have to keep changing it, because then you start forcing users to make those bad decisions that eventually become bad. But if you're using a password manager, then reuse it as much as you want. You can change it every day, because you'll never know what it is. Unrelated to password policy is a number of, I guess, advice if you're developing a system or maintaining a system that is also essentially punishing people for making good decisions about password. I've seen sites where the maximum length was 8 characters. Please don't do that. Please make a maximum length as long as your database can hold, because you don't want to punish the guy who's making his 30-character long passphrase out of his password manager. On that note, allow pasting into those password fields. I hate it when I've got my password manager ready to go, I've developed a password, and then I can't paste into the damn login page. Strength measurement. So we saw very early on that Twitter picture of someone comparing 2 password strengths. One was weak, one was bad. It's pretty common to have your, essentially a checkbox to say, oh, you've met the requirements, but there are a lot of other options for strength measurement you can use, such as the Have I Been Owned website has a very handy API, which you can hook into your login page, and if someone tries to register an account that is part of that database of 500 million, then it will let you know, and it will pretty much task the user to please try again and tell them how many times that password has been used. No pass-through history limits is really important as well, because if you have a history limit of 5, a user might just cycle the password all the way back around to the first one. Brute force protection as well is very important. I guess if you've got MFA, this might not be as important, but if you've got a site and someone tries to log in 10 times wrong, maybe just lock them out for 10 minutes. Incremental brute force protection is pretty good, where if you've tried to log in 10 times, log them out for 10 minutes, and then if they try again, maybe up to 20, then 30 and 40, and keep going from there. And finally, yes, store the damn password securely. So I mentioned hashes, but I didn't want to go too deep into how passwords can still be stored securely, because this is a whole talk in itself. But if you're confused or want to talk, then come up to me later and we can definitely talk about that. So conclusions so far is use longer passwords, use a password manager, put a passphrase on your password manager, use MFA as many places as you can, and I guess similar to the Bill Burr example is stop listening to random advice from people and adopting them immediately. Discussions are very healthy for determining if something is good or not. But I guess for the future, we don't know what could be in store for us, so biometrics are popping in. So does anyone have a face unlocked phone, or they use their thumb to unlock it? It's pretty common now, so maybe these will start replacing other factors to make it really easy for users to log in, but then there's a whole other question of you can't change your thumbprint, so that can be a problem. But that's pretty much it overall. It was a bit of a rant at times, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to talk about anything more in depth. Cool.
Do you have a similar problem with password recovery? Like they always ask you what's your mother's maiden name?
Yeah.
Next name, etc. So do those be leaked and have attackers use those to recover your password?
The leaks that I pointed... Oh, of course. So the question was about have the, I guess, security questions also been leaked along with passwords. I don't know. I've actually only looked at the password leaks. I imagine if attackers have got access to the passwords, they've probably got access to the security questions as well. And if you're reusing security questions, I guess we run into the same problems. So yeah, I guess what was your question? It definitely is a problem. And it's most likely leaked somewhere if the passwords have been leaked, because they're definitely data that can be used for something else.
So just resetting a better way than just not asking you to use passwords.
What was that, sorry?
Could you say a better way for users to reset password, receive an email, kind of two-factor?
Yeah. So I guess the correct way to reset a password is request a reset, and they send you a temporary reset link. They'll never send you the password because you're breaking the flowchart of sending a password. And then you reset it yourself and move forward from that.
Cool. Okay, let's, no one stand up or go anywhere. Let's thank Antonio for his talk.